unions Fedusa and Untu have both expressed their concerns about Transnet. They say that fraud, corruption and mismanagement have played a significant role in the entity's near collapse. We now speak to Cobus van Vuuren, Untu's General Secretary. Cobus, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika. Given the many issues plaguing Transnet, you've expressed your concerns on the ripple effect of the instability there. What are some of those concerns?
And good afternoon to the viewers. Transnet faces a myriad of problems. I think if you look at the operational side, the biggest stumbling block is the inefficiencies. And the inefficiencies can be ascribed to the lack of locomotives. And the lack of locomotives can be ascribed to the lack of spares to maintain the locomotives. And of course, all of this can be ascribed to the lack of funds.
So we also know, as you speak about a lack of funds, that the two Transnet executives who were implicated in the breathalyzer straw scandal during the height of COVID-19 were subsequently dismissed following disciplinary action. How worried is Untu about Transnet's future? Do you believe it can indeed be turned around?
Yes, Untu are extremely concerned about Transnet. It has been Transnet's performance has been on a downward spiral for quite some time now. And under the leadership of Portia Derby, the entity was not able to be turned around. So we are very curious to see who they are going to be appointing to Transnet specifically, and we are very hopeful that the appointment would happen soon, and that such an appointment is an incumbent that has got all the necessary skills, knowledge, and attributes that is required to turn this entity around. Because, yes, as you and I speak, I mean, there are concerns around the leadership vacuum with the resignation of CEO Portia Derby, as well as CFO Nonkululeko Dlamini also stepping down from her position. How imperative is it to fill those posts? It is extremely important that these positions are filled very quickly and with the right people. And you can't have a ship like Transnet being without a leader. A leader is supposed to design the direction and to execute on the various initiatives that is required to turn the entity around. Without that leadership, the ship is basically rudderless at this point in time.
The SOE has continued to record financial losses. I mean, you touched on this very briefly, with the results during the year ending March of 2023 reporting a loss of 5.7 billion rand for the foregoing financial year. With the devastating impact of corruption and the entity now facing an enormous debt crisis, even after acquiring loans to cover the losses incurred, do you think it's time to consider privatizing aspects of the rail network?
Look, as an organization that fight for labor rights, we're opposed to privatization. And the main reason is the ideological differences between state-owned enterprises and private organizations. Private organizations are driven by the bottom line only, whereas SOEs, there is an element of social responsibility as well. Our biggest fear is that if Transnet is privatized, that it will create job losses, and that would contribute already insanely high unemployment figure of 43% expanded rate unemployment in South Africa. We would rather see the entity grow, return to its original state, grow and sustain jobs, make sure that there's security in those jobs, and hopefully create new jobs.
How do you think, what sort of strategies do you think need to be implemented to return it to its previous state?
It's not one simple thing. I mean, if you talk strategies, definitely a turnaround strategy has to be implemented. But what kind of initiatives would contribute to that turnaround strategy would include the obtaining of funds through government to relieve the debt burden. Because if you think about the debt burden, it's standing at 130 billion rand, upon which Transnet is paying 12 billion rand interest every year. If you just take the interest portion that they had to pay over the last year and you reinsert that into the financials, then it would have made a profit. But the debt burden is probably the biggest contributor with regards to the revenue that is not being realized in a positive and constructive manner where it can actually show profits.
The Special Investigating Unit has recovered 37.6 million rand from the 3 companies that were involved in that corruption during COVID-19. Does this inspire confidence that, corruption is being tackled at the entity?
Look, we're glad that the money is recouped from these companies. However, the corruption that has happened and that we believe is still happening to some extent is not just these individuals. There is still corruption happening. Our biggest frustration is that with all of these investigations, the prosecution of these people that has been implicated in fraud and corruption and shady deals, the prosecution and the prosecution rate is still very far from where it should be. So we believe that that prosecution should happen quicker, faster, and that the people that is found guilty of these irregularities should be severely punished.
What role should the National Prosecuting Authority be playing in that regard?
They should be much more active. I mean, the turnaround time of these prosecutions are just way too slow. It does not encourage confidence. And I'm sure if you look at international investors within the country, the lack of prosecutions and the rate of prosecutions does not inspire confidence, not just in Transnet, but in the whole country.
Very well. Perhaps let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion. Cobus van Vuuren, Untu's General Secretary, speaking to some of their concerns about Transnet and, of course, the mismanagement and corruption elements at the entity, saying that more needs to be done.